بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. قال نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. فقد قال الله تعالى في القرآن العليم والفرقان المجيد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, we welcome you all for the final series which is happening during the month of Ramadan on the topic Science of Hadith. As we have seen in the past 4 parts, the collection of the Hadith started much earlier, as early as Hijri 100, and it extended all the way till Hijri 400, where different generation of scholars have collected the Hadith, and based on the collection and based on the categorization of these Hadith, they have given names to these kind of books. After Hijri 400, like we already mentioned, there is no considerable collection of Hadith required because almost all the Hadith have been collected by that time. Having said that, we also saw the work of first generation, second generation and third generation scholars in the field of science of Hadith. In continuation to that, it is also important for us to understand the current available text of Hadith, which is widely used across the scholars today. And when we say that the most prominent Hadith books available today, there is a misnomer here because some books are also considered as equally authentic as the Hadith text. So in order to differentiate between the authentic source of Hadith with the less authentic or the ones which are not authentic, it is also important for us to understand that there is also another category of the Hadith books. We already saw that one categorization of Hadith book is all with respect to the isnad. So be it a first generation, second generation or third generation scholar, all that mattered is to classify, to categorize the Hadith based on sanad, the isnad. The narrator chain have all been intact. And in doing so, there are also another classification of Hadith, there are also another classification of texts available today in which the narrator chains are not mentioned explicitly. So these books are not the primary source of references. However, several of these hadiths collected in these books will have references to the actual book. For example, we all know that there are several hadiths collected by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. So from Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih al-Muslim, there is another category, there is another group of hadith texts which will basically have references to that hadith. For example, we all have known, we all are aware of the book Riyadus Salihin. So Riyadus Salihin will not talk about the narrator chains. It will just have the Sahabi as a narrator. It will not have the narrator chain. Like the first narrator for that hadith will be a Sahabi, because he is the one who directly interfaces with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The moment he gets the hadith, if that is transmitted across different people, all other books like Sahih Bukhari, Muslim, Baihaqi and other texts will all have the narrator chain. However, if you see Riyadus Salihin, it will only have the narrator name as Sahabi only, the first narrator. After that, it will just give a reference saying that this hadith is collected from Bukhari or Muslim. So in other words, the second category of these texts will have references of Bukhari and Muslim, and not the sanad and not the narrator chain. So likewise, there are several books of this category. For example, Riyadus Salihin, Bulughul Maram and things like that. One thing we have to understand here is that though this is a collection of hadith which is to ease for us to search. For example, if you have to know the hadith with respect to Salah, which is spread across Bukhari, Muslim and other things, these books may become handy for us. However, this should not be treated as the final reference for us, because all we have to see here is that, let's say for Salah, there is a hadith which is mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, and if the author of this book has mentioned that this is taken from Bukhari, we should also go back to Bukhari and check whether this is authentic. The narrator chain is authentic. Likewise, there may be quotes of hadith which is referenced as taken from Tirmidhi. So we may not know that whether that particular hadith mentioned in Riyadus Salihin is authentic or not. So in order to check the authenticity of that hadith, we should go back to Tirmidhi and check whether that particular hadith which is quoted by Riyadus Salihin is mentioned in Tirmidhi, and that has a proper narrator chain, the isnad is intact. Though this is a very good service, however, when you compare with the service of the first, second and third generation scholars in the field of science of hadith, this service is considered as a relatively smaller service, because the bigger picture is already solved. The collection of hadith was a bigger task which is already solved by the first three generation scholars, and like I told you, it stopped as early as Hijri 400. And if you recollect, the last book in that series which is close to Hijri 400 is that of Hakim. The Hakim is the book which was the last, which is closer to Hijri 400. After that, the collection of hadith was not necessary, and what all has been done is just to categorize the hadith under different titles. And this is, relatively a smaller service when compared to the bigger task which is already achieved. However, we also know that there are several other hadith books which were written during the initial stages. For example, the first generation scholars have written several hadith books which is pertaining, which is basically towards only to, which is basically only for that particular region, which is applicable, which is collected basically from that particular region. So that kind of hadith, most of the hadith texts are not available today, because the reason being, either it is not published, number one, number two, either though if it was published, there were no students of these scholars who propagated this message, and because of that it is not preserved. So if we talk about all this hadith preservation and missed out hadith, people will also have a question whether all hadiths are preserved, or do we not have the complete picture of hadith. Like I told you, Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim have collected most of the hadith. There are several other hadith books which focuses on the hadith which is collected by Imam Bukhari and Muslim. Apart from that, they have also gone a step ahead to collect the hadith which is missed out in Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari, and that is also documented. So in a way, if you see that, there is not even a single hadith which is left out. Almost all the hadiths have been collected and it has been preserved. So this is especially for people who claim to follow only Quran. Certain people say that following Quran is only sufficient, we don't have to rely on hadith. Those people will also come up with a claim saying that, look, the hadiths have been preserved and we do not know whether it has been preserved in entirety. So for them, the answer we should be giving them is that the hadiths have been preserved and the collection of hadith is complete. Almost all of the hadiths have been documented either in one of these authentic texts. Okay, now coming back to the currently available famous texts of hadith, because this will help us help us understand that these are the authentic sources of hadith, and when somebody comes and shows us the reference from one of these books, if we do not know, if we are ignorant of these books, if we are ignorant of the collection of these books, then it may not be possible for us to understand whether this is a Sahih hadith or not. So in that context, it is also important for us to understand the current hadith text which is available in today's world. What all is available today in hand, it is a duty of each one of us to know these hadith books by name at least. The first one we all know is that of the Sahih al-Bukhari. So in Sahih al-Bukhari, Imam Bukhari collected almost 7,124 hadith. So this is the most famous and the most prominent hadith books used across the community. Number two, we all are aware of Sahih al-Muslim, which has a collection of 7,748 hadith. This is again a famous authentic text which is widely used and prominent among the scholars of this community. Thirdly, Abu Dawud. Abu Dawud is also an authentic text which is currently available. One can procure Abu Dawud now either in the form of a printed book or in the form of a software. So almost 5,274 hadiths are mentioned in Abu Dawud, which is collected by Imam Abu Dawud. Nasai is again a prominent hadith book which has almost 5,754 hadith. Imam Tirmidhi collected almost 3,956 hadith. Likewise, Imam Ibn Majah collected 4,341 hadith. Then comes Musnad Ahmad. So when we say Musnad means that it will have the hadith categorization based on the Sahabi. Based on whichever Sahabi narrated that hadith, these chapters will be classified according to that. So Musnad Ahmad collected almost 27,688 hadith. Likewise, Imam Malik, who was a prominent scholar in Medina, collected the book by the name Muwatta, and this has 3,676 hadith. The reason why it has only lesser number of hadith is because this is collected only from the people living in Medina. Likewise, Imam Darimi collected almost 3,567 hadith, and now there will be a question for us that apart from Bukhari, Muslim and Muslim, Abu Dawud, Nasai, Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah, other hadith books are not widely used. For example, when we talk about a fatwa, when we have to derive some rulings on Islam, when we have to collect the information from the hadith, mostly we will be collecting from Tirmidhi and Musnad Ahmad or Abu Dawud, Nasai and things like that. The very reason why the books like Darimi and Hakim are not famous is because most of the hadiths we will already get it from Imam Bukhari's collection and Imam Muslim's collection. Let's say if you have to derive a ruling on say Hajj, and if that ruling is already available from Bukhari and Muslim, there is no need for us to go and refer to the work of Darimi and Hakim, and that is the very reason why these hadiths are not famous. Apart from that, if you see, there will be a lot of overlap across these hadith books. Same hadith will be repeated in different hadith books. We have also seen that even Imam Bukhari documents the same hadith under a different topic, documents the same hadith under a different context. So likewise, it will not be required for us to go to Darimi or Hakim to refer to a hadith and then take a ruling, and that is the very reason why these books are not as famous as the work of Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. So Darimi has almost 3,567 hadith. Hakim has almost 8,803 hadith. There is a book called Ibn Hibban which has 7,491 hadith. Likewise, there is also a collection of book called Ibn Khuzaimah which has 3,099 hadith. So apart from this, Imam Baihaqi wrote two books. One book is called as Sunan al-Kubra. So we all know what Sunan means. Sunan means the categorization of the hadith based on different topics, different titles. So that categorization of books are called as Sunan, like Sunan Tirmidhi, Sunan Nasai and things like that. So Imam Baihaqi wrote two books, one by name Sunan al-Kubra. Kubra means bigger one, which has which is huge. So it has almost 21,601 hadith. The reason why Imam Baihaqi had so many hadith in this book Sunan al-Kubra is because it had hadith which had proper sanad, number one. Apart from that, it also had the quotes from other hadith books. Like I initially told you, like the book of Riyadus Salihin and other books, it had references to, like, this hadith is referred, is mentioned in Bukhari, this hadith is mentioned in Muslim and things like that. That is the very reason why Sunan al-Kubra had 21,601 hadith, because it had the hadith which had proper sanad, narrator chain, number one. Number two, it also had the quotes from other books. It was referring to hadith mentioned in other texts also. Likewise, the second set of book written by Imam Baihaqi is called as Sunan al-Sukhra. So this is a collection of book which is relatively smaller than Sunan al-Kubra, because it has only 4,883 hadith. It has only hadith which is categorized based on sanad, which has a proper sanad. It do not include any quotes or references quoting hadith from other hadith books. Imam Nasai wrote two books, one by the name Kubra and the other one by the name Sughra. The Kubra has no filtration, it has almost 11,768 hadith, and the smaller book had a lesser number of hadith. There is also a book called Mojamul Kabir, Saghir and Awsat. Imam Tabrani wrote all these books. The definition of Mojamul, if you recollect, the Mojam means to collect the hadith from the scholar. Let's say the hadith collected by Imam Tabrani gets the hadith from different teachers. So the hadiths are categorized, unlike categorizing based on the Sahabis, the hadith which is categorized based on the teachers of this particular scholar is called as Mojam. So the Mojam al-Kabir is the biggest book which has almost 22,796 hadith referenced, and Mojam al-Awsat is a medium context which does not have more hadith, but it's not relatively smaller as well, so it had almost 9,489 hadith. Likewise, Mojam al-Saghir is the smallest book written by Imam Tabrani, which has 1,198 hadith. There is also a classification called as Mustakhraj. The meaning of Mustakhraj is to have the additional routes for the hadith which is mentioned in Bukhari and Muslim. For example, if Imam Bukhari documents a hadith which has 4 different routes of 4 different route in which the hadith is collected, the Imam Abu Awana went ahead to identify whether there is any other route missing. For example, if the same hadith is collected from 4 different sources, Imam Abu Awana went ahead to find if there is a 5th source for the same. So likewise, this categorization of hadith is called as Mustakhraj, which has 7,065 hadith. But to understand this one, this classification was kind of redundant, because already when the hadiths are already collected, there is no need for us to understand if there is an additional source for the same hadith which is already documented as Sahih, or which is already categorized based on the narrator chains. There is also other books. All these books, whatever I am just mentioning, all these books are available in the market, either in the form of printed text or in the form of softwares, so that if a references of any hadith is quoted from these particular books, we should not be ignorant of the fact. The next book is called as Musnad Abu Ya'la. Imam Abu Ya'la documented this Musnad, which has 7,555 hadith. So like we recollect, Musnad is the one which is referring to the collection of hadith which is based on the Sahabas. There is also a hadith called Daraqutni. The famous Imam Daraqutni collected almost 4,898 hadith. And Imam al-Bazzar collected Musnad al-Bazzar, which has 3,450 hadith. Sunan Sayyid bin Mansur. Sayyid bin Mansur is the first generation. He falls in the first generation of scholar who was very famous for this. He does not fall in the first generation. He is relatively a scholar who lived in the earlier times, who collected the book called Sunan Sayyid bin Mansur. Sunan is a collection of hadith based on the different titles. So this has almost 2,978 hadith. Now, there is another important classification of hadith which is called as Musannaf. The meaning of Musannaf is to have the hadith of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, number one. Number two, it also has the opinions of companions. Number 3, it also has the opinions of the tabi'ins. So this book had 37, this still has 37,943 hadiths. But all these are all not attributed towards Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Only 15% of this hadith is basically told by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Remaining is all remaining all hadiths are through the companions or through the tabi'ins. So these are all the individual opinions of the companions and tabi'ins, because of which almost 37,943 hadith are mentioned. This kind of categorization of books is called as Musannaf. So Musannaf Ibn Abi Shayba has 37,943 hadith. Musnad Ash-Shafi, the prominent scholar, prominent Imam Shafi also wrote several books in the field of hadith. But one thing we have to see here with respect to the work of Imam Shafi is that all the hadith, almost 1829 hadith mentioned in this book Musnad Ash-Shafi, all has the narrator as Malik, Imam Malik, because Imam Shafi is the student of Imam Malik. So almost all the hadith, 1829 hadith, has the narrator as Malik. So that is why it will be mentioned as Akhbarna Malikun, I heard it from Malik. So because all these hadiths are told by Imam Malik, Imam Shafi is documenting them, and it comes to around 1829. There is also another Musnaf written by Abdul Razak. Musnaf is the one which has the words of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the opinions of companions and the opinions of tabi'in. It has almost 2133 hadith. Also, the prominent scholars of hadith like Imam Bukhari and Imam Baihaqi wrote other books apart from the well-known text. So those are again important for us to understand. Adab is a book written by Imam Baihaqi. So this is called as Adab al-Baihaqi. So the Adab is to refer to character or a quality. So the reason of categorizing these hadiths is because Adab, the hadith documented in Adab, will not have anything with respect to ibadat or anything with respect to salah or worship and things like that. Rather, Adab will talk mostly in terms of the good qualities, like one should not lie and how should you behave, and it is more like a personal development aspect which is documented in the name of Adab. And Imam Baihaqi has almost 867 Adab. Now when I say that this has 867 hadith, most of them will not be authentic, because Imam Baihaqi did not give so much of importance to categorize based on Sahih and Dhaif to the importance he has given to other authentic books. Imam Baihaqi wrote other authentic hadith books in which he has given so much emphasis to categorize the hadith based on Sahih and Dhaif. However, with respect to the advices on personal character, because it is not, he felt it is not required for one to go and do one level of scrutiny to understand whether this is authentic or not, because certain things will be like common. For example, do not lie, do not backbite, all these will be common. So it is not, he felt that it was not required for him to go one step ahead and classify this based on Sahih and Dhaif. Also Imam Bukhari wrote another book, if we remember it correct, we also talked about this in a couple of sessions back, where Imam Bukhari wrote a book called Al-Adab Al-Mufrad. This Adab Al-Mufrad, unlike the collection of Imam Bukhari, where we have the prominent prominent hadith which is collected by Imam Bukhari, unlike that one, this book has authentic hadith. Apart from that, this book also has hadith which do not have a proper narrated chain. In terms of sanad, even if the hadith is weak, it is documented in this book, and it has almost 1322 hadith. So we should understand that Imam Bukhari, apart from writing the famous book Bukhari, which is known across people, he also wrote other books, but he did not give so much of emphasis which he has given to the book which is prominently available today. Also Imam Abu Dawud interestingly wrote a book called Marasil. Marasil is the plural for the term Mursal. Mursal means something which is broken. So when we come into the identifying the narrator, when we come into the understanding the classification of hadith in the coming sessions, Insha Allah, we will be seeing what Mursal means. However, for us to understand now, Mursal means broken, the chain is broken. So when we say that narrator chain is intact, That means the narrator, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would have told the hadith which is narrated by a sahabi, and all the way until the last person who documents this hadith, which is the scholar of the book, who is the author of the book, until that the narrator chain should be intact. If there is a slippage of this one, if there is if we find that this is not continuous, if this chain is not continuous, this hadith is classified as mursal. Imam Abu Dawud interestingly wrote a book called Marasil. The very reason being, Abu Dawud has collected several hadith. From the several hadith, if we recollect it, Imam Abu Dawud has, in the famous book Abu Dawud, Imam has documented 5274 hadith. But what did he do with the other collected hadith? Because after he collected the hadith, there is a several level of scrutiny which has gone into that to categorize it based on Sahih and Dhaif. So what did he do with the remaining hadith? So in general, he has collected almost 19,467 hadith which falls in the bucket of mursal, and that is categorized in the book called Marasil. Imam Abu Dawud wrote the book called Marasil, which has 19,467 hadith versus 5,000, we saw 5,274 hadith. So 5,274 hadith are authentic, 19,000, let's say almost 20,000 is not authentic, only 5,000 are authentic. That means of the 25,000 hadith collected, approximately 25,000 of hadith collected by Imam Abu Dawud, he feels only 20% of that hadith can be categorized with a proper narrator chain. And even in that 5,274 hadith, there may be authentic hadith and there may be weak hadith also with respect to the person involved in narrating the hadith. So this is also for our information. Apart from that, the Imam Ibn Arabi wrote a book called Mojam. So if we recollect, Mojam means to have the hadith with respect to the scholar. So whichever teacher taught that hadith, the hadith will be categorized based on the teacher. And Imam Ibn al-Arabi has a book called Mojam Ibn al-Arabi, which has 2,460 hadith. Musnad Ibn Abi Shayba has 998 hadith, which has almost 998 hadith. So these are the bigger texts which is prominent. Apart from, there are also several other texts which will be informative for us, inshallah. Abdullah ibn Mubarak wrote a book called Musnad. So it is known as Musnad Abdullah ibn Mubarak, which has 275 hadith. Imam Tabrani, interestingly, he wrote a book called Musnad Shamiyin. Sham is the term referring to the current day Syria. So all the hadith collected from Syria, he is categorizing in the book called Musnad Shamiyin, which has 3,557 hadith. So it is implicit that Imam Tabrani have collected different hadith from different sources, and he has categorized the hadith based on collection from the area from which it is collected. From Syria, if it is collected, he has named as Musnad Shami. Likewise, from Iraq and Medina and Mecca, if he has collected, the book should have been named accordingly. So it has almost 3,557 hadith. There is also a Musnad collected by Shihab. It's called Musnad Shihab, which has 1,371 hadith. Musnad Al-Humaydi has 1,361 hadith. Musnad Al-Haris has 1,124 hadith. Musnad Tayalisi has 2,767 hadith. Likewise, a person by name Ishaq bin Raghawaigi has collected 2,425 hadith, which is called as Musnad Ishaq bin Raghawaigi. Then there is a Musnad collected by Shashi. It is called as Musnad Shashi, which has 1,458 hadith. Now, when we talk about all these hadith books and so many scholars involved in this one, for a layman, we will have a very basic question here as to, when we talk about the different scholars of hadith, where is the work of Imam Abu Hanifa? Because people might feel that we have deliberately left that name. No, it's not the fact. Interestingly, though most Muslims claim themselves to be following to the school of thought Hanafi, the interesting note here is that Imam Abu Hanifa have written no books. The reason being, he was an architect of Baghdad. He is a wise person, he is a very talented person. He was an architect of Baghdad who has not written any book in the field of hadith. However, there are there is a book called as Musnad Abu Hanifa, which is a very small book of 40 pages, which has only 366 hadith. Though this name Musnad Abu Hanifa portrays as if this is written by Imam Abu Hanifa, in fact this is not written by Imam Abu Hanifa. It was written by some other person, the students of Imam Abu Hanifa. How did this book evolve? For example, Imam Abu Hanifa would have narrated hadith. He would have been in one of the narrated chain. So of that hadith, there is an extra effort put by the people to search for this hadith, whichever was mentioned, whichever had the narrated chain, one of the narrator as Imam Abu Hanifa. So that is categorized as, called as Musnad Abu Hanifa, which is a 40 pages book which has only 366 pages. People may also say that the books of Imam Abu Hanifa have been destroyed by the enemies, and this is also not true. The reason being, he was very close to the Khalifa of that time, because he was made the prominent architect of the city of Baghdad, and his student Abu Yusuf is also the judge of the Sharia court. The judge of the Sharia court was a student of Imam Abu Hanifa. It is very obvious that the books of Imam Abu Hanifa have not been destroyed. Rather, Abu Hanifa did not write any books. Though he is a talented person, he is an intellectual, he is a wise person and things like that, he did not write any books in the field of hadith. Though there is a book in the name of Imam Abu Hanifa called as Musnad Abu Hanifa, this is not written by Imam Abu Hanifa. This is just for a reference. And next one is written by Ali ibn al-Jad, which has 3462 hadith, which is also called as a Musnad. Musnad Ali ibn al-Jad, which has 3462 hadith. Musnad Musnad Abdullah bin Humayd has 1494 hadith. Apart from these hadith, there will be several musnads, thousands of musnads in the name of Abu Bakr, Aisha, Abu Huraira, and all the Sahabis for that matter. So these books are all nothing new from the other books, whatever is existing. Rather, these books are a different categorization. For example, if the narrator chain has Aisha, all the hadiths which is narrated by Aisha will be collected in the name of Musnad Aisha. Likewise, all the hadith which is collected in the name of which has a name Abu Bakr in the narrated chain will be classified as Musnad Abu Bakr and things like that. So this is also another categorization of hadith. Apart from that, there is another book called as Ibnatul Kubra. So Imam Ibn al-Battah wrote this book which has Ibnatul Kubra, which has 2643 hadith. So all these hadiths, so almost 30 and 40 books we have seen. All these hadiths are the one which has a direct reference, of sanad mentioned in them. Now coming back to the second categorization of hadith book, which do not have the direct categorization, like the books which is so famous called as Bulughul Maram, Riyadus Salihin. All these books are also considered as authentic texts by most of the Muslims here. However, that is not the fact. Some of these books are called as, one book is called as Khaznul Ummal. The Khaznul Ummal has 46,624 hadiths. If you see the hadith mentioned in all these books, it will have a reference to a different hadith book. So for example, in Khaznul Ummal, you will have the word Akhrajahul Bukhari. So I got it from Bukhari, I wrote it from Bukhari, I referred it from Bukhari. So this phrase will be mentioned in most of the hadith. Likewise, Miskatul Masabih, this is the most prominent hadith book which is taught in even madrasas, which has approximately 3000 hadith. Al-Muntaqa, which is written by Ibn al-Jarud, is also falling into the second category of hadith book, which is not authentic. Rather, it has reference to the other book. Likewise, Jamiul Usul, written by Ibn al-Asir. So, and Jamul Jawami also is a hadith book which is like Riyadus Salihin, Suyuti, Majma'ul Jawaid, Sarah Sunnah, Riyadus Salihin, Bulughul Maram. All these hadith books are also considered as authentic, however it is not. But when we say that this is not authentic, it does not mean that this does not have any authentic text only. The point I am trying to make here is that though the hadith quoted here refers to a hadith which is mentioned in Bukhari, we should not blindly take this hadith into picture and consider that this is authentic. Instead, we should go one step ahead. We should do another level of scrutiny to go back to the Bukhari and see whether this hadith is actually mentioned there. Otherwise, let's say if this hadith says that this is mentioned in Tirmidhi, we should go back to Tirmidhi and see whether the hadith mentioned in Tirmidhi is an authentic one or not. So the second level of check is required for the second category of hadith. So with this, we have come to the end of the Ramadan series organized by USTJ in the field of science of hadith. I'm sure this will not be so interesting because it's more about learning history. It's more about learning the types of books, the more about learning the number of hadiths of each books. The very reason it has been told is because so that we are aware of what all books are existing today, so that if somebody comes to us and say that this is a hadith, we should be aware whether this is falling into the authentic text or not. So for that reason, all these have been discussed. Inshallah, since this topic is a huge one, the organizers of this program have requested us to continue this after Ramadan also. So inshallah, we'll resume the other important aspects of hadith. So all the while we have been seeing with respect to the classification of the hadith books and classification based on the different different scholars of living in different generations. The most important thing what we should be understanding is two other things. One thing is to identify the narrator, because whole hadith, if you have to categorize this based on sahih or laif, is based on the criticism which has to be done on the narrator. So that is a very important field. Inshallah, we'll be looking more into that field where it has based on the memory power, based on the weakness of the person, based on his old age and things like that. How do you gauge the person? How do you gauge the person whether he is reliable or not? That is a most important study, inshallah, which we'll be seeing. Number one. Number two, the bigger important thing than this is to understand a hadith and take that into consideration only if it does not contradict with the teachings of the Quran. So these two are the prominent works done in the field of research of science of hadith. Inshallah, this will be very handy for us going forward. And I sincerely pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that whatever series we have been seeing during the month of Ramadan is beneficial to us in terms of understanding the religion better. When we have to propagate the religion to others, when we have to preach, when we have to do dawah to other people, the first thing which is essential for us is to understand the religion better. And in order for us to understand the religion better, we have to stick to two yardsticks. One is the Quran, the Kitabullah. The other one is the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is spread across all these hadith texts. So with this note, we conclude this, and we hope that we resume after Ramadan and continue doing this going forward and provide as much as information as possible. Wa akhirana walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Innahu huwas sami'ul alim.